8 years, not too many players are coming into this place. Why is it? If it's a very fundamental question or problem to be solved in this industry, and if it's lucrative, why not too many players are coming to place as the other, say, DEX aggregators landscapes are? And if it's not too lucrative, why are you still staying here for the last 7 years?
Yeah, I would say it's a pretty simple answer, and it's just that it's a very hard problem to solve. The reason we have got into such a nice experience today is because of the amount of years that we've put into understanding how Bitcoin works and the kinds of technologies that we can leverage with such a limited blockchain. Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts like Ethereum, like Solana. It has very limited Bitcoin scripting capabilities. And there are some pretty interesting primitives with regards to hash time lock contracts, atomic swaps that we've had to leverage. And they're not easy problems to solve. So I would say that it's mostly just our experience that has really helped us solve a lot of these issues.
I see. So it's more about like the tech, like the deep know-how in the technical part that makes you feel that you want to stick in this vertical, and this is a big enough problem to solve, right?
Yeah. Also, it's just like bridge hacks are such a large contributor to hacks in the space, right? It's like 60 to 70% of all of the hacks in the space are related to bridges. So it's like people that are already solving bridging on EVM chains, SVM chains, they don't want to take that risk with supporting something as complicated as Bitcoin and putting their whole reputation on the line. So it's part of the reason why it is just such a hard problem to solve. It's like there are so many different risks, so many different attack vectors, and how do you mitigate those? How do you make sure that user funds are never at risk, or reduce the amount of time that they're ever deployed in like a smart contract or a decentralized custodian or anything like that?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned like a Bitcoin bridging has been very hacked, like a severe place of hacking happen. And I feel like that leads to the result, like say Bitcoin holders, they tend to be more security focused. And then that means they don't want to move their assets around. So it's like a chicken and egg problem that the more we want to unlock the Bitcoin liquidity and maybe more shit happens. And then the more they just want to stay in its self as a Bitcoin maximalist. So like how you want to address it, because I feel this is more than technical. It's even like cultural narrative and everything together.
Yeah, definitely cultural. I would say that was probably one of the biggest constraints when we were working on Ren is how do we actually convince Bitcoiners to use something like this when you're having to deposit your Bitcoin essentially into a third party network to then mint assets on another chain. How do you then trust not only the chain that you're minting the assets to, but also the custodian which is holding your Bitcoin? And we wanted to make sure with Garden that we removed this idea of a custodian entirely and just have peer to peer atomic swaps. So a user deposits Bitcoin into a Bitcoin script for a very limited amount of time. It's a very simple Bitcoin script. And then they withdraw, they redeem, Ethereum, Solana, stable coins, whatever it is on the other side. But there's never any funds sitting there at rest in a third party network. And I think with Bitcoiners, especially, you just have to make sure that the absolute worst case is not that their funds can get lost or there's a hack. The worst case needs to be that they're able to recover their funds after like a time lock or there needs to be something hard coded in the smart contract or the Bitcoin script. That means that even if a market maker isn't on the other side filling the order, they're able to refund after say 24 hours, 48 hours, and funds are never sitting there at rest waiting to be hacked.
Yeah. So like from your experience of the 7 years working in this industry in terms of like UX and UI, because we're talking more about like bringing the Bitcoin liquidity into the bigger ecosystem. Like in terms of UX and UI, what are you thinking of like designing to make it different so that we can enhance or facilitate this process?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when I got into the space in 2017, I have like a UI UX product background, and I would say there weren't really many things that any places for my skill set really at the time. So I dove headfirst into, how do you build a blockchain from scratch? How do you design smart contracts? I was very deep on the protocol backend side. And then I would say over the last couple of years, people have started thinking about, okay, as the regulatory landscape clears up, as more retailers entering the space, And we've kind of had that 0 to 1 moment with crypto. How do you then take that and scale it from 1 to 100? So then you have to think about, okay, how do you abstract gas away? How do you reduce the number of clicks that a user has to do to bridge their funds? But I would say like 5, 7 years ago, this wasn't really at the top of our mind. And it was more just like, let's just build the tech. And then if people have a need for it, they'll come use it. But you didn't really have to think about, user experience, user interface, stuff like that, which is like, I'm very happy that that's something that is actually at the top of people's minds now.
Yeah, I think also actually Levi is doing a pretty good kind of thing here by abstracting all different chains, abstracting all different transaction type, and so that makes sure that users almost have like a as smooth journey as a Web2 experience would be, right?
Mm.
If we look at the Bitcoin culture, somehow I feel like because I'm old, I come from like a Bitcoin time back in 2012, and then I go through the Ethereum time in 2015, and now it's then DeFi summer, and then now it's Solana meme coin. Do you feel like this whole Bitcoin culture has lost its edge to the new commerce into the ecosystem? Because in a way, I still want to feel that Bitcoin should be a hardcore of the whole ecosystem. This is the backbone of us. But I also feel like it's losing its edge. So what do you think we can do to make sure this culture can still be embraced and be known by more people?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of inevitable, especially when there's less money to be made with Bitcoin as, more speculative assets. I think it's kind of natural that more people are going to be talking about, the potential 100x's rather than something that is considered more stable, more risk off, like Bitcoin, especially in the crypto space. But I would also just add that Bitcoiners haven't really had a lot that they can do with Bitcoin because it hasn't been fully unlocked on other chains. There have been attempts at it in the past, but it's not until very recently that Bitcoiners have actually been able to, you know, deposit Bitcoin and access it on an L2 where they can have meme coins, they can have NFTs, they can have these more kinds of speculative assets that are built on top of Bitcoin fundamentally. So I would say we're kind of seeing this pick up in the last year or two with ordinals, runes, stuff like that. And now there are more interesting kinds of Bitcoin L2s on the BitVM side as well that are more security conscious and just making sure that they don't actually affect the trust assumptions of Bitcoin itself. But it's more just a matter of when these opportunities open up for people, these retail users will start to come back in to explore the landscape.
Yeah, but here maybe I want to challenge you a little bit here. Do you think maybe Bitcoin it really go back to its very original design, which is like more a store of value, and then it's going to be more institutional, and then it's going to be more people just lock in their value in the Bitcoin. So in a way, we talk about a lot about like bring Bitcoin liquidity to the other ecosystem, which is Bitcoin to the other routes. But you guys, what you I believe building is like two direction. Actually, you can also bring the other liquidity into Bitcoin. So no matter what the market is trending, in a way, you guys you can facilitate this process. Is it?
Yeah, I would say to be honest, I don't really understand the narrative that Bitcoiners don't like doing anything with Bitcoin. They just want to like sit around and hold it. I think I was talking to some folks from, tier one dexes recently, and I was asking them about, what are their plans for Bitcoin? How are they planning on tapping into Bitcoin and unlocking it? And they had the same comment. They're like, we're not sure if people actually want to trade Bitcoin. And I was like, aren't you competing with centralized exchanges where 90% of the volume is Bitcoin? How can you say that people don't want to trade Bitcoin when that's who you should be thinking about? That's your market. Surely you should be thinking about how do you unlock this Bitcoin into your DEX and bring that liquidity away from centralized exchanges like Hyperliquid have done, for example, recently with supporting Bitcoin natively. And it was an eye-opening moment for me in that it kind of made clear that people haven't really understood how much Bitcoin is still waiting to be unlocked in DeFi. There are a couple of guys thinking about it now, but I would say there's still a bit more work to do to really realize this potential. And I would say we're kind of on the forefront of this, and we're hoping to eventually be able to help these DeFi projects unlock Bitcoin into their apps because there's such a large amount of Bitcoin just waiting to explore the kinds of applications in DeFi today.
Yeah, echo on your thinking. I was also talking to like say custodial service providers. They were being very conservative, and previously they don't want to do anything on chain, and now they're also talking about BTC to Hyperliquid because it's such a big lucrative trend to catch on. So I do think that we still have a lot to crack on the Bitcoin routes into the EVM and the other way around. And I think what you guys are doing is great.
Yeah, also just excited to be doing it together as well with the Gardens integration going live in LeFi in the next few weeks. Excited to see how we can help unlock Bitcoin for LeFi's, 500, 600 partners that you guys have. Having Bitcoin swaps directly in MetaMask, Phantom, wherever LeFi is integrated. That's just something I'm super excited about over the next few months.
Yes, so just like a short notice, LeFi is integrated into Binance Wallet, MetaMask, and Hyperliquid, and a lot of 600 wallets and DeFi protocols. So through DeFi, you will see Garden very soon in 2 to 3 weeks.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.